Alright guys, MTech Guy here. So we had a bit of rain last night here on the South Island, but it's a beautiful morning, so I think this is a great opportunity to get an oil change done on the little 1 Series, the E87 130i. I've owned this car for a few months now, still haven't got an oil change done on it, so it'd be good to get it done today. So the service intervals that BMW gave for these cars was 25,000 kilometres, which I think is about 15,000 miles, which is insane. It was all part of the marketing at the time, you know, advertising a relatively low service cost if you bought one of these cars, and it probably lasted well out of its warranty. But I mean, this car's like, what, 15 years old now, so if it's only had an oil change every 25,000 kilometres, it ain't going to do the engine any good. So what I've always done with all my 6-cylinder BMWs is always aim to cut that in half. So I'll wait for the counter to come around to 25,000 and then I'll do one at 12,500 also. And I've found that's just about right for these 6-cylinder engines. I've done it with my N54 engines for many years, never had a problem. They've all run really sweet and I've had a lot of good luck with them. And then of course these cars have got an electronic dipstick also, so you know, why would you want to have a regular dipstick when you can have a computer chip that won't even work it out properly half the time? So yeah, thanks, that's great BMW engineers, thank you very much for that one. But listen, it is what it is with these cars, that's what you get with this generation of BMWs. So today we're going to run through the steps required, how to change your oil out, how to check the level on your electronic dipstick on the dashboard, and then also how to reset the service indicator on the dash. So for starters, let's take a look at what we're going to need to get the job done. Alright, so to start off with, we'll take a look at the oil. Now I've gone for the 5W30 fully synthetic here. Now depending on what climate you live in, you might want to go for a 5W40, but for the most part, 5W30 is going to be more than adequate for these engines, and it's certainly going to help out with that lifter tick that these engines are notorious for when they're cold also. And as well as going for the fully synthetic, because it's going to last a lot longer, it's going to take a lot longer to break down, you want to be looking for the BMW Long Life 01 approval, LL01. Now they did also do a LL04 that was more specific for the BMW diesel engines. Now you can use that in the petrol engines also, but it's best to go for the LL01 fully synthetic 5W30. Now these cars, the capacity in the engine for the oil is 6.5 litres, so you need to keep that in mind when you purchase your oil. Next up, we'll take a look at the oil filter. Now you can go out and buy a genuine BMW one. I've gone for the Mann branded one here. These were the OEM manufacturer for BMW, so if you do go out and buy a genuine one, it's more than likely it'll have Mann stamped on the top of it. So if you go for an aftermarket OEM one like this Mann one, it's going to save you a lot of money over the genuine BMW one. Now there are a lot of manufacturers for these oil filters out there, but generally I stick with either a Mann, Hengst or Meili. I've had good luck with all three of them brands. Alright, next up you're going to need a tool to remove the oil filter housing cap. Now the older style ones had a nut on the top of them moulded into the plastic, so you just needed a socket or a spanner to remove them. Not so much with these engines, it's just flush at the top, so you're going to need a cup removal tool like this. Now this is an 86mm diameter with 18 flats on it. You can get aftermarket ones out there, they're generally pretty cheap. Now I've gone for a genuine BMW one here, it's aluminium, it's well made. The part number there for anyone that's paying attention. Made in Germany. I think this cost me $17 or $18. It's going to last a lifetime. So they're the bits and pieces you're going to need to get the job done. We'll also run through the tools required as we go through the job. So first up, we're going to start the engine up, let it idle for a while, just let the oil warm up because it's going to be much easier to drain it once it's nice and warm. Okay, so now that the car's all warmed up, next up we'll get the front end of the car up in the air. Now if you do want any tips about jacking up an E87 1 Series, I have done a previous video on it. I'll leave a link at the top of the screen here. Alright, so as you can see, we've got the front end of the car up in the air now and securely positioned on axle stands. So if we take a look at the plastic under tray underneath the engine here, as you can see, we've got this wee cover plate here. Now we need to remove this to gain access to the oil drain plug in the oil pan in the sump. So to remove this, we need to take a large flat blade screwdriver. We're just going to turn this 180 degrees, I'll flip down, and then that just slides out like that. And now we'll position our oil drain pan to capture all the old oil, and then we're going to use a 17mm socket to remove the sump plug. So while that's draining and doing its thing, instead of just laying on the ground watching it, we can take a look in the engine bay here, and we'll start off by removing the oil filler cap. And that'll just let it drain a little bit easier, and then we'll move on next to removing the oil filter. So we'll take our removal tool, and then we're going to need a 27mm socket. Wind that out. And as we're winding this out, that oil will just drain down through the opening in the pan. And now we're ready to remove the filter, and we're just going to be careful that we don't dribble oil all through the engine while we do so. There we go. Okay, so here we have our dirty old oil filter, complete with oil filter housing cap, and of course the sump plug that we removed from the bottom of the engine. So now it's time to fit the new clean oil filter, and these also come with a new cap O-ring, a sump plug washer, and another O-ring to replace there. Alright, so now we're ready to fit this little lot back into the oil filter housing there. Give it a nip up with the wrench. You don't need to go crazy, just pull it down until it stops. There we go. And now that we've got the new filter fitted, we're ready to refit our sump plug, complete with new copper sealing washer there. And now we can tighten that up. You don't need to go mad tightening it, just enough to compress that copper washer. There we go. And now we can refit the cover back into position. So here we have all the old dirty engine oil, and if we take a look at the markings on the side of the pan there, you can see we've drained just about 6.5 litres. So next up, we'll fill the engine up with new fresh engine oil, but before we do so, I'm going to drop the front end of the car back down on its wheels, make sure the car's nice and level, and then we'll pour some new engine oil in there. Alright, so we've got the car sitting back down on its wheels now, and I've got the car nice and level. So next up, we'll pour the new engine oil in. So I'm going to pour about 6 litres in altogether, and then we'll start it up. We'll warm up the engine, and I'll check that level before I top off that last little bit. So that's about 6 litres of engine oil now. So next up, we'll start the car up, we'll let it warm up, and then we'll check that level using the electronic dipstick. So now we'll start her up. And I'll let this idle for a few minutes with the bonnet down just to give the engine a chance to warm up nicely before we take that reading, because it does need to be up to temperature before you can get an accurate reading. Now if you're lucky enough to have a facelift model, an LCI 130i, you'll have an oil temperature gauge in the gauge cluster there. This is a pre-facelift model, so I'm not that fortunate. It is a bit of a guessing game, so we'll give that a few minutes. Okay, so that's had a little bit of time to warm up now. The engine's been running for a few minutes, so next up we'll take a look at how to read your oil level through the instrument cluster here. So to start off with, we need to take a look at the indicator stalk, and we're going to utilise this toggle switch on the front here and the BC button on the end of the stalk. So we're going to use the toggle switch just to scroll through the settings in between the gauges here, and you want to keep going until you see the oil can. There we go, and then we're going to press and hold the BC button. And there we go, it says OK, so that's the check complete. So you can see we've got the minimum and maximum marks there, just like you would see on a real dipstick. So you can see we're a little bit shy there, so it looks about 0.2 of a litre. So we'll top her off and then we'll come and take another reading. There we go, just a little top off, we don't want much. So now we're ready to take another reading. See what we've got this time. Okay, so you can see the levels still showing that we're just shy of that full mark there, but I've put about 6.3 litres in altogether, and we drained out between 6.3 6.5, so I'm confident that it's more or less at the full mark now. Now this reading that we're taking here, this is a quick reading, and once you take the car for a drive, it'll do a more thorough check. This is just a quick one to get you going again. So what we'll do is we'll leave that for now, and once I've taken the car for a long drive, I'll check it again and then just top it up as required. Now if you're lucky enough to have the iDrive set up in your 1 Series, or maybe unlucky enough, if we just scroll through here to Info Sources Service, you can see we also get another reading here for your engine oil level, and that's showing that it's at the max at the moment. This reading's a little bit more accurate, but like I say, it is worth just taking the car for a decent drive and then leave it running and just check it again and top off as required. So we're just about finished now, and all there is left to do is to reset that oil service interval counter on the instrument cluster there. So to do that, we just need to turn the ignition to position 1, don't start the car. And then we're going to press and hold the trip reset button there. And when we see the service icon come up between the gauges there, there's the one for the brake fluid. We're going to use the toggle switch on the indicator stalk to scroll through till we see the oil can for the oil service. Once you see that, press and hold the BC button on the end of the stalk. You'll see there's a small clock going there, then let go of the button. And there we go, done, easy as that. Alright guys, so there we have it. That's how you go about changing out the oil in your 1 Series E87 130i. If you found the video interesting or useful, don't forget to give it a like, and make sure you go and check out the rest of my YouTube channel for more BMW DIY videos. I'm MTech Guy. Thanks a lot for watching.